He said at the Berlin dialogue that Germany is asking for an exemption from US sanctions on oil. The UK has already sorted and probably got an exemption. So then why is Bharat being singled out? Listen in.
China is cutting back very substantially on the purchase of Russia oil, and India is cutting back completely, and we've done sanctions.
We are talking to the United States, of course, but we don't do deals in a hurry, and we don't do deals with deadlines or with a gun on our head. India looks long term. India never takes decisions in a rush or on the pressure of the moment. And we've accepted if there's a tariff on us, there is a tariff on us. We're looking how to overcome that. We're looking at newer markets. We're looking at a stronger demand impetus within the Indian economy. So we have a very resilient structure.
Now, Dr. Jaishankar has also said something. He said that the global energy trade had become increasingly constricted and principles are applied selectively. So yet again, Bharat very clearly turning around and saying, why single out India when you have a different equation vis-a-vis Germany, vis-a-vis UK, vis-a-vis China? Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey, security analyst, is with us in the Noida studio. Economist P.K. Basu, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra with us here in the studio. We also have Makarand Paranjpe, author and professor, JNU, with us. Burzeen Wagmar of the SOAS, South Asia Institute, University of London, with us. And Raymond Vickery, author and advisor on US-India relations, and also a former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Trade Development, also with us. My namaste to everybody, and let's start with Raymond Vickery. Mr. Vickery, can you hear me? This is Anand here.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, sir. So let's start with you. Is this fair on India? Do you think the Commerce Minister and also the Foreign Minister have a fair point to make that these energy restrictions are constricted, principles are applied very selectively?
Well, thanks very much for having me. You know, to wage peace like you wage war, you've got to have both a strategy and partners. Unfortunately, under President Trump, we have neither strategy, and partners are put to the side. Everything is about the transaction and who's going to win the transaction on that particular day. So the questions of equity, the questions of equal treatment, really go out the window. What is important to President Trump is that he's going to win the transaction with the particular person or entity or country that he's dealing with at that time in order to come out on top in the transaction. In the longer run, this is no way to run a railroad, much less an international foreign policy. And it is true that there has not been even-handed treatment in regard to people who should be put into a coalition in which there is some question of equity, some question of cooperation, rather than just who's going to win the deal on that particular day. That having been said, it seems to me that it is up to India to decide in terms of this great question of war and peace, namely the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the worst violation of the principles of the United Nations Charter to which India is a founding member, as to what India will do and what's in its interest. And it's all very well and good to say, well, we don't do things at the point of a gun and we take our time. And that's great, but in the end, it is who are you going to what is your strategy? What's India's strategy? Who are India's partners in terms of waging peace and trying to bring peace and prosperity through the world? I believe that the United States and India, the two greatest, largest democracies, I would argue greatest democracies in the world, have so much in common that there is a need to cooperate, to get us back on a path of both strategy and partnership in order to build peace and prosperity. That's not the path we're on right now, and it's going to be up to clearer and saner heads on both sides to bring about the kind of upward trajectory that we've been working on for the last 30 years.
Who are the clear and saner heads, and what should Bharat's strategy be? P.K. Basu, your thoughts?
Well, I think what has happened in the past week is, of course, that the US has imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, which basically makes it almost impossible for most imports from Russia in terms of oil. Rosneft has a big presence in India because it bought the old SR Oil. It's now called Naira Energy, and it's very awkward because it's effectively an Indian company which is 50% owned by Rosneft, and if Rosneft is now subject to sanctions, it's going to be very difficult for Naira Energy to continue to function, which almost forces Rosneft to sell out its stake. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that Reliance, some of the state-owned refineries, but particularly Reliance, were buying a lot of their oil over the past year or two from Rosneft and Lukoil, particularly Rosneft. And this was in accordance with what the Biden administration wanted. They wanted to keep oil prices low, and India was helping that process by buying oil from Russia at levels below the market as a sort of punishment to Russia. The prices were kept below market to punish Russia, but at the same time, India, by buying that oil and then supplying the refined product to the world, was helping to keep Brent prices low. Now, it so happens that Brent prices are pretty much at their year low. Just before the sanctions were put in place, they had declined to just about $60 a barrel. So they've risen a bit to around $65, $66 a barrel. But despite the sanctions, there hasn't been as big an impact. I think you can be sure that the Trump administration will never act against their own interests, particularly with oil, and they want oil prices to bottom out around $60 a barrel, not fall too far below, because that will hurt the gas industry
right.
Yeah. So basically, $60 seems to be the trough. There's a good reason, good economic reason for the sanctions. Now, the political posturing is also interesting because, of course, President Trump, when he wasn't president, when he was running for president last year, was saying that Ukraine started the war. But now he is playing peacemaker. He's taken the other side after the summit with Putin, and it changes. His position on the war changes from month to month. But at the moment, he is trying to put pressure on Putin and Russia. From India's standpoint, whether we want to or not, I think we will have to reduce our oil purchases from Rosneft and Lukoil. There are very few other suppliers from Russia, and most private companies do need to access the global financial system, which is still dollar denominated, and you don't want to go against those principles.
But that is not. There's nothing free about this trade. Then, Makarand Paranjpe, there's nothing free about this trade. There's nothing free. This is nothing but an American hegemony or a whip that is being enforced on nations. How is that fair?
Yes, but we need to accept it. I mean, there is superpowers, like China is a hyperpower, and so is the US. It's still the dominant power in the world. And we have to accept these realities. There's no point beating our chest and being sentimental about it. If somebody else is transactional, we have to be transactional. So I want to depart from the Indian commentariat a little bit by saying that let's not keep blaming others and this futile, what I would call Trump bashing or Trump trashing. Yes, he's a great disruptor, but what is our playbook? In fact, that is the Sanatani way. We have to go inward and see what our response is. Look at China. After Trump 1.0, they worked so hard and got leverage through the rare earth squeeze that they are now applying. What is our leverage? So rather than constantly complaining that this is not fair, there are double standards, look at the history of the world. Do you think superpowers, conform to some ethical standard? No. They are a very complex entity. Look at the British Empire, which we suffered for 150 years. So it's time for us to think of whether we have a playbook for Trump 2.0. And, we need to be transactional too. We need to offer them something, whether it's on Ukraine, whether it's boots on the ground in the Indian Ocean, our region of influence, or whether it is strategic realignment, not strategic autonomy, which is just another name for non-alignment. So I think rather than spending all our time and energy complaining and pointing to double standards or inconsistencies, I think it's time for us to think about how perhaps the time has come to modify or reset the Modi doctrine itself.
Ambassador Dogra, agree, disagree? At the cost of trying to then become a vassal state of America, it's better to be an enemy of the Americans than be their friend, they say.
It's not a vassal state. It's being pragmatic and transactional. Not a vassal state at all. Swarajya is paramount.
I don't want to pick up fight with my co-panelists.
Yeah, I have to play devil because that's the other way to look at it. Nations that have been friends with the Americans have been treated like doormats. Look at all of them. They all had to rush and they all had to say, and then he was treating them like they were their servile vassals. That's how Donald Trump and his attitude was to all these nations who seem to have gotten a free pass. Do I really want to be treated like that? 20% of the world's population, fastest growing economy in the world, the nation whose time has come. Do I really want to be treated like that? And at what cost? America being a friend of America hurts more than being its enemy. That's what the general axiom is. But Ambassador Dogra.
Exactly. I think doormat is the valid point. India has refused to be a doormat. In fact, besides Brazil and China, India was the only country that stood its ground and that's standing its ground. And I'm proud of that. But what is the effect Trump's misadventures and so-called transactional approach or dictatorial approach, I would say, is going to have on India and is already having on India? Let's look at the hard economic facts first. There are geopolitical issues also which I'd like to touch upon. The economic facts are that India had benefited, let's say, between $1 to $5 or $6 at various points of time in the last 3.5 years because of the better energy prices we got from Russia. Now, Rosneft and Lukoil account for about 4.5 to 5% of the total global oil supply on any given day.
Right.
So if they are out of the market, the prices will rise. And prices will rise to the benefit of America, to the benefit of the Gulf countries, to the disadvantage of India. So on top of the billions of dollars it is losing already, starting 21st November, which is the deadline given by Trump, it will start losing much more because as prices rise, we will have to pay much more.
Correct.
So that is one thing. The second is not just the transactional or arbitrary approach. It is show me the face and I'll show you the rule I'll apply. That is Trump's approach. Turkey is not mentioned at all. China is not touched at all. Europe has been given till 2027 to sort of switch over completely. Or look at Pakistan. There are trucks coming in from Iran every single day carrying thousands upon thousands of barrels of oil, and Iran is a sanctioned country. Iran also supplies to China. Trump doesn't talk about it. So what are our options? Do we simply, I think ultimately we'll have to comply with what he says, but let me explain for your viewers that supposing there is some war-like situation or political tension, do we want to be dependent largely on the Gulf source? Russia was giving us that leeway that, you have another stable source of supply. And the related thing, which again I think your viewers need to know, is that we have stakes in Russian oil fields, Sakhalin for example, and there's another one, I forget the name. What do we do with the oil that is coming out of there and which is our share? So I think, I hope, and I'm sure, given the statements coming from our ministers, we will stand our ground. It's going to be a tough fight, but I think Indian public needs to be prepared for some sacrifice.
Just quickly, before I bring in Burzeen Wagmar and General Pandey, Raymond Vikri, Penny, for your thoughts on what should be Bharat's move? What should India do?
Well, India has to do what's in its interest, but one would hope that its interest include its own values, that it's not just how can we protect our borders and we're the greatest, it's not just a mirror image of America first and make America great again, India first and make India great again, but it is filling what is a leadership gap in terms of international relations among the democratic nations of the world. And that means that India will have to decide for itself what its strategy is, what its interest, its values, and what kind of a world it wants to live in. And I agree, it's not enough at this point to say, we're being treated unfairly. It's a question of leadership, and India can provide some of this. And I would hasten to point out that Donald Trump is not the United States of America. We are a great democracy, and we have been through this in the past. I've lived through the 60s, the assassinations, the Vietnam War. We're a great democracy. We've got midterms coming up. We're like India in terms of having reliance on people. So we shouldn't get so tangled up with the person who is in a leadership position right now. We have to look at the longer term values, and I would hope India would provide that leadership.
The question is that who's going to bell the cat in the US? Who's going to tell Donald Trump that you cannot weaponize trade and you cannot weaponize tariffs to an extent, because he doesn't seem to care about the courts. And it's not on an even keel. One nation's been singled out. Burzeen Wagmar and then General Pandey. Thank you for your patience, sir. But Burzeen Wagmar, if the Chinese can say we will stop buying soya bean and they can push them back, and then bring the Americans onto the table again, what is it that India can do? Why don't we have that kind of a level?
Because China is the workshop of the world. India has not reached that stage. But what India can do, to directly answer your question, is to take a realist approach, and it's already doing so. So let us talk about what India has done, Anand. In September 2025, Russian crude imports dipped already by 38% before the full-on 50% slap was felt of tariffs. In the first 3 months of 2024, Jan to March, Russian crude again dipped to 28%. So India has already been playing the market, because the Russian discounts range anything from $3 to $11 a barrel, and they've never been consistent, although you have raked in $140 billion worth since the onset of the war. It has fluctuated, and India has consistently leveraged the markets to its benefit and will continue doing so. Even prior to what Mr. Basu rightly mentioned of Rosneft mulling over leaving India, it already is, because Naira Energy's 49% stake of Rosneft, they wish to divest. There's been talk of it in the last few months of the Vadnagar refinery in Gujarat, but they cannot do so because it's tied up with EU sanctioned regulations. So that's just another kettle of fish. But Rosneft itself was already going to leave India even prior to what has just been announced recently, I believe in the last 48 hours, of Ambani's, ramping down their purchases of discounted crude coming now to Jamnagar. Then there's the question of what one would arguably ask, well, how will India suddenly turn to consistent supplies? It's perfectly possible, because India's imports are all seaborne crude. They're not through pipelines from any country, and you were traditionally buying it from Iraq, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Iran is another angle on it to be brought in, because when sanctions have been imposed on Iran and Venezuela, India did play by the book and stopped purchasing from them too. So this is just another player to stop purchasing. And what would happen in the first, what I would envisage, and economists have worked out, is that 7.4 billion monthly revenues will be discontinued to Moscow, with sanctions now on Rosneft and Lukoil, of which 3.6 billion are tax receipts that go into the Kremlin war chest. That is both India and China, who purchase 86% of Russian crude as we are on air. So that would make some impact, but then that's not good enough, because Trump has to also put in his bit, saying at one moment that he will supply Zelensky with Tomahawk missiles and then reneging on it, just shows that the man is capricious, as we know, even at the best of times. So, and finally, Anand, just on a point, the Indian economy is the question too. You have an 87 billion export basket, which is more than 2% of your GDP with the US. And the effects have been acute in that you've seen a weaker rupee, you risk imported inflation, you have an exodus of foreign portfolio investments, potentially speaking, and rising borrowing costs for foreign currency debtors. Balancing all that into the factor, I think it's a perfectly sound move for India to move away from Moscow, because you're not obliged to buy from them.
Correct, but it makes economic sense because the crude prices for the common person has been below 100 rupees for the last 2.5, 3 years. In fact, 4, despite the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and even through COVID. The last 5 years, the average has been the same 94, 95 rupees. So that's the biggest benefit pass, because the moment crude prices cross 100, 110 rupees, it's the first direct pinch of inflation.
And 86,000 crores have been garnered by the 3 big PSUs, IOC, BBC and HPC, none of which really passed on to the Indian consumer. And Ambassador Dogra, you are correct to mention about the Sakhalin Island, and also Indian investments by ONGC Videsh and Oil India in the Kamchatka Peninsula of Siberia. And $87 billion worth of dividend is due to India by Putin and Moscow, but obviously because they are broke and stuck, it's not being paid, and Moscow is in arrears to India for payment for these foreign dividends.
So can we negotiate with the Americans to at least allow us our share of the oil? PKG coming after General Basu speaks. General Pandey speaks. PK Basu, General Pandey. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you know what happens is, Anand, that we start looking at a very narrow time span. We started looking at what is happening in last about 6-7 months, or other 8 months since Trump has come. What we are not seeing is that this government, in last about couple of years after COVID, had realized the shocks which comes with disruption. Galwan happened, there were multiple issues which happened, and they realized that they cannot rely on one line of trade or oil or whatever import is coming. So I think in last about 4 to 5 years, 6 years, they spread the basket around, right? And if you look at it, right now we're looking at only Russian oil, because Russian oil was not our main pipeline which is coming. We had multiple this thing based on oil prices. Wherever the cheaper oil was coming, we are pumping oil from that side. And we have taken, a point which was just brought out, that 86,000 crore rupees of advantage is not being given to the public. But I look at it, that is where the shocks are being absorbed, because the government has been looking that, okay, we keep on pumping in, we keep the prices here. If you recall, politically it became a very sensitive issue that the cost have come down of the barrels, crude has come down, but we are not passing the benefit to the people. But you look at the infrastructure development which is taking place, you look at there
are also the petro bonds which are to be paid off. The interest which was from the UPA time.
Correct.
Those debts
that debt has been paid off. You have been able to stock. You got reserve stocks which are pretty okay. So this, I think, today the privatization aspect which has come about has ensured that we plug into the cheaper oil market where it is coming. So the sanctions are going to raise a cost for you, geostrategically, geopolitically, and even in terms of economic terms. I'm sure the government is looking at very keenly to allow the other pipelines to start flowing. Right. So that is what is going to happen, and this is what has been happening for last about 5 to 6 years. A very, very smart move. But when we look at the disruption of Trump, then we start getting worried. Now, second is we have to look at the future. This is a pressure point which is being brought against the Russians, against Putin. Right? it is going to not last for too long. Somewhere somebody is going to give it. And we are possibly coming down to November, we have had the maximum benefit of being able to avoid what the pressure was coming about. So let's say this whole thing gets resolved in next 5-6 months, the pipe starts flowing, right? It will happen. Somebody will give in. Either Putin will give in or Zelensky will give in. Somebody is going to give in next 5-6 months.
Because I think there is immense pressure on Zelensky also to not hold on to it, because there's not too much of help coming and he can't sustain. So there is a certain agreement that he will have to eventually come down and sign on the line, because Ukraine has suffered to an extent that it will take at least another 5 decades to recover. Yes, PKG.
So to come back to oil, now we cannot abandon Russia altogether. Russia is a tried and trusted friend. There is no question that we can stop buying oil from Rosneft and Lukoil because they're sanctioned entities. But to the extent that we can buy from others, we will continue to buy from Russia, because it is foolish of us to entirely abandon Russia. It's a long-standing friend. And it is a matter of simple geopolitics. Now, Professor Vickery has talked about the sort of democratic alliance, etc. Now, in our view, the Russia-Ukraine matter is not as simple as that. It's not as if Ukraine had no role in the start of the war. The fact that on the 7th of December 2021, President Biden more or less said that Ukraine will eventually join NATO, which is actually going against what Jim Baker had promised Gorbachev in 1989-90, is part of the problem too. I mean, if you really want to start reinventing the wheel on who started the war, then we need to go back all the way there. Now, but the point is that India cannot become completely dependent on just Middle East oil, West Asian oil. Second is that with regard to allowing oil prices in India to decline, I think this government has been remarkably politically courageous in keeping oil prices from falling too much, because after all, we are an oil scarce country. We need to import 85% of our oil needs, and it makes absolute sense to keep oil prices at an even keel, not let them come down too much, so that we can continue to shift away from the dependence on fossil fuels and move towards renewables, which, if you look at all our new power projects in India, almost everything is renewables, which is the right way to go, and we need to encourage that. So that is a long-term thing. Now, we still remain dependent on coal. Thermal power is still a big legacy factor, but in terms of new energy, we are moving towards renewables, and that has to be the way forward. Cutting oil prices would be foolish.
Not just that. Point is that the Indian consumer, I'm just going to see if Raymond agrees with us.
We actually have a little bit of cushion. Even if oil prices go up by $10, $15 a barrel,
the biggest price sensitivity, sorry, I'm interrupting you. The biggest price sensitivity in our country, and everybody would agree, is sudden rise in the price of oil and the sudden drop. And people are okay with the drop, but if it rises back again, according to market forces, there's going to be rebellion on the street. So it's something which has been avoided so far, and it also helps shore up certain level. We had a lot of debts to pay to, etc. But we're just going to shift the focus, and then I'm going to broaden the scope of this conversation with the permission of our guests and our viewers to bring in the AFPAC region also. To understand, Raymond Vickery, what is Trump's gambit with Pakistan? Because now, Sir Marco Rubio says US is interested in rebuilding strategic ties with Pakistan, but not at the expense of Bharat. Today, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar met Marco Rubio in Kuala Lumpur on the sidelines of ASEAN. But Marco Rubio said that we would like to get back into engaging with Pakistan, a nation which Trump decried in Trump 1.0, but now seems to be actively engaging with. So much so that they are also offering troops for Gaza, troops in Saudi, there is a defense settlement there is a crypto engagement. What's the game with Pakistan, or what is the game that Pakistan is playing that US perhaps is falling back into the trap? There are different ways to look at it.
Well, I think the game with Pakistan is a transactional one. Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. Pakistan has sucked up to him and said, yeah, you ended the Sindor engagement and you deserve that. And we're all in. You're the greatest guy that ever lived. And he's subject to that kind of blandishment. In addition, there is something going on in regard to crypto. His family has made $3-4 billion since he's been president. That has in part been crypto, and there are ties in regard to Pakistan with that. So that's what's going on. It's not a matter of the man having any kind of indication of what should be doing.
No, because he wanted to get back into Bagram. Why is the US now wanting to get back at the Bagram air base? What is their thought process vis-a-vis Afghanistan and this entire conflict that's brewing on the western side of the Pak border? Because there is an impact that Bharat will also have to face because of what's happening there. So your thoughts, Raymond, quickly, and then I'll take it to our other panelists and we'll expand the scope of this.
I think President Trump goes back and forth between wanting to be an isolationist and wanting to be an imperialist. And he woke up one morning and said, it'd be great to have a base there because that would make me more influential in Asia and international relations in that part of the world. I don't think there is any plan. I don't think there is any strategy. There is no reason behind it except what he wants to have happen and on any particular day. And he's an expert at making great television. For 14 years, he was the reality TV star. And so this is another way to get that. I don't believe there is anything further than that about it. And trying to put it into some sort of rational strategy is useless. We can only hope that the democratic processes which are going forward in this country are going to provide some level of rationality going forward.
He's unsparing in his attack, isn't he, Raymond Vickery, pulling no punches this evening on the broadcast. But Makrad Paranjpe, the Afghans are saying we are not going to share water. We're going to block water. We're going to put the bar. So there's a two-front war or a water war that the Pakistanis are facing. The Afghans wanting to break away from Pakistan clutches, but their trade routes are all through Pakistan or they have to go via Iran. How do you see this developing vis-a-vis the US influence or the tacit backing of the US? The Pakistanis are playing the Chinese on one end and they're dancing with the Americans on the other. And Bharat is watching. Or do you think we're doing something?
Exactly, Anand. Once again, I would say let's focus on ourselves and let's see what we can do rather than constantly trying to analyze the others. I think to answer your question, the Afghanistan-Pakistan, well, you might say royals just now are working in India's favor, obviously. But just to throw, a curveball, so to speak, to use an American metaphor, or a googly, what if India, just as a counterpoint to the Pakistan-Saudi Arabia treaty of mutual defense as well as the nuclear assurance from Pakistan to Saudi Arabia, what if India and Israel sign a strategic treaty, sharing intelligence and saying whoever attacks one is is an attack on the other. I'm just saying these as possibilities because strategic autonomy really means the ability to choose and to make realignments. Without that, we're just standing and watching. So, for example, suppose we had a strategic agreement with the US that if China attacks us, the US will support us. I'm just giving you these as hypothetical cases, not to be either thrown out of the window or seen as actual statements of policy. The point is we have to rethink our own foreign policy given the current conditions and challenges. We are, I feel, so focused on the other and trying to figure them out that we are not thinking enough about ourselves, our own capabilities, our own possibilities. And this is where I think, once again, reverting to the so-called Sanatani framework, not just of diplomacy, but of self-understanding. Swatantra, Swarajya. Where is our Swa in all this? What have we done to rejig our own ideas and strategies in this world? In fact, I feel that with due respect, when it comes to our diplomatic corps, we need far more diplomats. We need far more lobbying. You know, it's a very small service. It's very efficient. It's wonderful. Kudos to them. But the world has changed. And if we are the fourth largest economy in the world, why don't we have the fourth largest diplomatic corps? Somebody told me, and maybe Mr. Basu can confirm this, that Singapore has more diplomats than India. Even if it's not true, the fact is we need to expand our diplomatic footprint as well as our strategic footprint. And we can only do that by being pragmatic and realistic and not sentimental. Thank you.
Well, two people who have plied their wares in this region and with these nations are also sitting with us here in the studio. So let's ask them, because when you say Swa and knowing thyself, one of the principles also is about Shatru Bodh. To understand what the Shatru is up to and what their Shatru's strength, weakness and their next movement is going to be, and plan ourselves accordingly, and to be always aware. So that is, understand what your enemy is doing and why they are doing so. So now if we are given up the Aini Air Base in Tajikistan, which didn't exist, Ambassador Dogra, I know there's a history there with you. Are we saying, okay, let's move into Bagram? Is there something there? How would you see these developments affecting us, not just vis-a-vis trade, but also geopolitically? Yeah.
Well, you touched a very raw nerve. I'll leave it at that on Aini.
Ji.
But Bagram, sometimes I feel Trump is like a child. He needs a new toy every day. Had it been another president, he would have first wondered, what did we get after posting 250,000 soldiers in Afghanistan? A massive defeat. By posting, supposing they get Bagram, the maximum they'll post in that tiny little space is maybe 5,000 people. They'll be slaughtered. Whenever Taliban wants, it'll be like pigeon shooting, clay pigeon shooting. So that's a no-go. It's just that Pakistan is giving him a lollipop every other day. One day it is gold, the other day it is non-existent oil, the third day it is crypto, which no Pakistani has the money to buy. So Trump is being led up a garden path, but he's not the only American president to have been deceived by Pakistan very successfully. In fact, a string of American presidents have been deceived. But it is of major concern to us as to where Pakistan-America relationship is going. Like it is of major concern to us where Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship is going, because it is no longer just Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship. It is Pashtun versus Punjabi-Pakistan relationship. And India is not an island. India cannot exist just by itself. The record of last 40 years shows us that every terror incident sets back India psychologically, financially, and society-wise. So we have to exist in this world which is flat, continues to be flat. So let's not be very idealistic. Let's not think that India can close all its borders and live in a vacuum. That's not going to happen, and that should not happen.
Oh no, we're not talking about closing borders. The thought process is to expand the borders, sir.
Exactly, I agree with you.
The perspective is to expand borders. The perspective is to create new avenues and to try and also capitalize on a situation which General Pandey believes yahi samay hai, sahi samay hai. He's always had a thing that perhaps 2025 there is a mahurat for doing something productive, constructive towards securing our interests geopolitically, which will also have an impact on trade.
Before General Pandey, I agree with them wholeheartedly, because every moment is the right moment. Otherwise, we will lose something. And a country like India cannot afford to sit back and watch.
General Pandey.
Yeah, okay. So, actually, a lot of people have been cursing Trump on this show, but let me just wind back. I think Trump, when they moved back from Bagram and they vacated this thing, there are a couple of things which was happening that point of time, and I think they were retreating away from the Asian continent, Indo-Pacific and everything. What they did not realize is that very quickly the Chinese, which is rising up in terms of economic heft and military prowess, are going to be occupying the space which they have done, right? So just look at, we have talked of Operation Sindoor or Pahalgam as a major turning point. And again, that is where our narrow vision and short-sightedness. I'll now come down to Sanatan. Somewhere the Sanatan in long term has been forgotten, and we have been always looking at immediate.
Yeah.
The crypto deal was already signed. There was an engagement which was already commencing with Pakistan. There was a pushback. When you start looking at trouble in Sri Lanka, you start looking at trouble in Dhaka, you start looking at, there were things which are already manifesting. But when you start looking only at India-Pakistan relationship and you tie up with the American relationship, you start looking very narrowly. I think there was a major shift in Trump 2.0 in which the deep state of this administration or in the American policy started saying that, look, we have neglected, we have been focused too much on a region of middle or MENA or whatever you want to talk of, and we have retreated our space, and therefore we have allowed the Chinese to come to expand the trade, take over the markets and everything, and we need to start correcting it. This whole process was set in motion by Biden, right? He may curse Biden publicly, but if you look at it, he's following on majority of the policies what Biden had started laying.
Following up. So there is a continuity in terms of the American thought process.
So we may very quickly blame Trump today that whatever he's doing, he's just disrupting. Actually, he's only talking as a president of front. That is how he is. He's trying to take ownership. He's trying to take that big boss and that reality show kind of an activity. But the fact is, majority of thing has been under play. And you look at, he went to
Indonesia, Malaysia.
Everywhere. Why is he now going? He's dancing in Malaysia. He, in his never in sense, will like to go back to his place. So start looking at, then they realize that Bagram is not going to come back. Because Taliban in no way will allow Americans to come back to Bagram, because then their sanctity in Afghanistan is to go out. And Bagram is very important for Americans for the issues which for control, for leverage in China, Russia, their systems. It is an alternate. They got multiple bases all over the place. In this region, they don't have a base to fly on and off from. And therefore, China is just a couple of hours. So is Central Asian Republic, so is Russia. It allows him an alternate. So where does he go? He starts going to the bases in Pakistan. You are well aware that we hit a couple of those bases.
We bombed quite a few of them. That is where, why do you think that on the second day of Op Sindoor, their number 2 chap says that we got nothing in concern with India-Pakistan thing going on. The day on 10th morning you bomb one of those places which is very critical to them, they start dialing all over the place. So you have to look at holistically. Today, Americans are coming back. They are pushing back the Chinese. Unfortunately, this entire thing, we are caught in this entire cycle.
We are caught in the whole thing.
We want to think that we are too big, we are very important, everybody should come sucking up to us. It is not going to happen. There's a fight between two mighty people, right? There's a conflict which is on, and I think we need to find our ways around this conflict. So how are we going to find that? Because we are surrounded by trouble all around us. We've not even focused on the northeast and what the Bangladeshis are trying to do with Yunus and that one. We'll park that for another day, perhaps Tuesday, take this conversation forward. Right now we'll focus on AFPAC only. Burzeen, and then we'll close with you, PK Basu, because we've got 4 minutes on the show. Burzeen, your thoughts, and then I'll circle back to you, PK Basu. Yes, Burzeen.
Pakistan does have oil, but just ask the Hungarians who've been extracting it in NWFP, much to their regret, and they have had terror problems, not to mention the Chinese too with gas. That's one thing. What Pakistan does prodigiously have is copper, antimony and other critical minerals in Rekodi, Balochistan. And what was mooted recently that Pakistan wants to develop Pasni, a fishing village 100 miles from the border with Iran, into another port. Just like Gwadar is pie in the sky thinking, because Gwadar, even after all this time, despite being on lease to the Chinese since 2017, accounts for less than 1% of all of Pakistan's seaborne export trade. So that tells you what a white elephant it's going to be, although they may try to put that out to Trump, which they've been trying to do so. But Anand, the qualification here, let's not get too rattled, because the conversations that Field Marshal Munir had, and I have to keep reminding myself he's a Field Marshal now, not General, were with people in US business community members within the Beltway. It was not at the Oval Office for floating this new so-called $1.5 billion port, deep sea port at Pasni. And yes, India is already diversifying.
Yeah.
Today, as we speak, China supplies 81% of Pakistan's arsenal. Today, as I speak on air, Moscow supplies only 36% of India's arsenal, and thank God for that you're not so heavily dependent on a country with clunky Soviet equipment, and that you buy from elsewhere, notably the UK, Israel, France, and elsewhere. So that has already happened, and India has already taken steps in the last few decades to wean itself off from Soviet hardware. It will take much more time because of midlife maintenance and spare parts, but even a time will come when that will go down below 36%, and not a day sooner insofar as I'm concerned as a historian. Thank you.
Right.
Well, I think we should think back to Quad. There was supposed to have been a Quad summit in September.
Yeah.
It's almost November, and there's absolutely no discussion. We are supposed to host a Quad summit. Quad has suddenly taken a significant backseat. Now, we have a new Prime Minister in Japan who is a hawk. It is important for Japan to start rearming the way Europe has started rearming. So there's a natural alignment between India and Japan. We need to start working together on the economic and strategic front with Japan, and also we need to take a look at why it is that the United States has already started to think about India as a potential threat. We are nowhere near a threat to the United States. We are a natural ally. We have been saying this for 25 years, and unfortunately, there is already thinking in the US about India being a potential threat. Otherwise, there's no explaining why there's a $100,000 fee being applied on H-1B visas, which 70% of which are used by Indians, and there's no real
See, they watered
trade
down
agreement. So all of this is slightly troubling. I mean, I think our diplomacy needs to work a little bit harder to ensure that the American public, the American think tanks, elites, don't think of India as a threat. They come back to thinking of India as a natural ally, a democracy after all. And because if you think back to the late 1970s, the United States supported Pol Pot, China's ally in Cambodia. If you think about the tyrants of the 20th century, he's about the worst. And the Americans supported him over others.
I think
whereas here, we've got the opposite situation. America is already thinking of India as a threat, as a very distant future threat, but now taking actions to
Well, whether nations think of us as a threat or as a nation, as a friend, it's for those nations' perceptions. How do we think of ourselves, and what is it that we want to project to the world? I think that's a tightrope that we are walking, and as a nation that's growing, a nation that is finding its swur, if I may quote Makran Paranjpe, finding its own, coming into its own, there will be those who will not be very comfortable about it. But that's their problem. Our problem is that we've got to keep focusing. What is it that we need to do? How is it that we can take this forward? That's a conversation we need to take it forward soon. We're already 50 minutes into this amazing, engaging discussion. I'm compelled to pause it here. I thank all our panelists for joining in and participating so wholly and with their candid views. Thank you so much. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, viewers, there's trouble in Pakistan. Quetta. The TTP is giving the Pak military a tough, rough time. Stay with us.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
when he said that the state governments will also have to cooperate with the Election Commission on the SIR issue, and I think that was a hint being made at the West Bengal government where it's become a political issue. In fact, taking on the Election Commission in some cases, kind of attacking the EC officials, that seems to have been the hallmark of much of the attempts which has been made by the SIR. So they're saying that, you know, the entire purpose of this SIR is not because we want to target any one political party or any one particular state, and even if they happen to be in the opposition. He made that point when he said that, you know, there has been a lot of political comments and I don't want to comment on that. So what is the point over here is that the entire purpose of this revision is to ensure that one, people's names are there on the voters list, those who are eligible for it, and second, if there's a multiplicity where, you know, one person is registered in 2-3 addresses or many people are registered to one address, those who even expired, those who have got married into another family and migrated to another states, their names are also not duplicated onto a voters list, and this is an exercise which has to be carried on periodically. So where is the politics in all of this? But as you pointed out, Ayushman, I can see through the list that there are states like Kerala, West Bengal, and those are the states where, and Tamil Nadu, of course, where all three of them are happening to be poll-bound states for 2026. If this is one issue which really brought the entire India bloc together, which we saw in the monsoon session of Parliament, it was a SIR. So we'll have to wait to see, one, during the winter session of Parliament, if this is going to be taken up yet again, another issue. And the second important thing is that does the India bloc now plan to unite once again to come out with a campaign or movement across the country against this fresh SIR?
Absolutely, because the states involved were quite outliers when it comes to multiple issues that would hit the India bloc, the DMK as well as the TMC. We always saw issue-based support in having a united front with the India bloc. But could this unite those kind of power players when it comes to India politics? And Kamalika, coming to you on that point, the TMC, so many questions being posed about West Bengal to the Chief Election Commissioner. Currently, we're also learning that the Bengal CEO has called for an all-party meeting for the smooth functioning of the SIR exercise. What are the rumblings that you are learning from the state of West Bengal, which has pretty much declared war against the special intensive revision?
Oh, it's rumbling all around. Let me first tell you that as we pointed out, tomorrow is the day when there will be all-party meeting in ECI, where right now I'm standing, Bengal Chief Electoral Officer office. Here, all-party meeting has been called off by the Bengal CEO. So all the political parties will come, and obviously they will actually present their version of it. But clearly, this is, though, you know, most of the questions were regarding West Bengal, and the CEC Gyanesh Kumar, he said that the law and order is a state subject, and obviously this type of situation will not arise. But politically, clearly, the state's ruling party, they are opposing SIR. None other than the Chief Minister has said that SIR is a sort of NRC. All these types of statements have been on, and as the SIR has just been rolled out, has just been declared, it's quite clear that the Trinamool Congress, nowhere they are going to change their stand. They are saying that if bona fide voters' names are deleted, they are going to go and do everything for that. So they have already lined up rallies and meetings. They will definitely attend this all-party meeting and will actually try to weigh the water, what's actually happening. But the perception from the ruling party is clear. They are going to oppose it at any cost. On the other hand, the big development always is also on the other side, that the BJP, they are absolutely supporting the entire process of SIR. They are on their point that 1 crore, more than 1 crore voters' names will be deleted, and there it will be proved that West Bengal, a lot of voters are from outsiders. There are a lot of fake voters and all these things. So the political war is on. The political war of the Battle of Bengal of 2026 has just started, and the rumblings is that definitely Trinamool Congress, they are not going to support SIR in any way. On the other hand, the BJP is going to support. Now we'll have to see how all this implementation.
The TTP is troubling the Pak army. Now, there's been a deadly attack in Quetta, and this is news coming in the southern town area of Quetta. Heavily armed assailants opened indiscriminate fire. They also hurled grenades at the station late evening, causing a gun battle. Station house officer or the SHO has been killed in the line of duty, and sources say multiple police personnel injured as reinforcements rushed to the spot. The area has been cordoned off. Reports of continued exchange of fire are also coming through, and preliminary input suggests it's not the TTP, I stand corrected, it's the Baloch groups who are involved here. Also, intelligence agencies are on high alert across the Balochistan. Across Balochistan, there's a high-level security meeting expected as Quetta faces daily attacks. With that, we call it a wrap on this edition of The Right Stand. Thank you for watching.
Co-presented by This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
When he said that the state governments will also have to cooperate with the election commission on the SIR issue, and I think that was a hint being made at the West Bengal government, where it's become a political issue. In fact, taking on the election commission, in some cases kind of attacking the EC officials, that seems to have been the hallmark of much of the attempts which has been made by the SIR. So they're saying that, you know, the entire purpose of this SIR is not because we want to target any one political party or any one particular state, and even if they happen to be in the opposition. He made that point when he said that, you know, there has been a lot of political comments, and I don't want to comment on that. So what is the point over here is that the entire purpose of this revision is to ensure that one, people's names are there on the voters list, those who are eligible for it, and second, if there's a multiplicity where, you know, one person is registered in 2-3 addresses, or many people are registered to one address, those who even expired, those who have got married into another family and migrated to another states, their names are also not duplicated onto a voters list, and this is an exercise which has to be carried on periodically. So where is the politics in all of this? But as you pointed out, Ayushman, I can see through the list that there are states like Kerala, West Bengal, and those are the states where, and Tamil Nadu, of course, where all three of them are happening to be poll-bound states for 2026. If this is one issue which really brought the entire India bloc together, which we saw in the monsoon session of Parliament, it was a SIR. So we'll have to wait to see, one, during the winter session of Parliament, if this is going to be taken up yet again, another issue. And the second important thing is that does the India bloc now plan to unite once again to come out with a campaign or movement across the country against this fresh SIR?
Absolutely, because the states involved were quite outliers when it comes to multiple issues that would hit the India bloc, the DMK as well as the TMC. We always saw issue-based support in having a united front with the India bloc. But could this unite those kind of power players when it comes to India politics? And Kamalika, coming to you on that point, the TMC, so many questions being posed about West Bengal to the Chief Election Commissioner. Currently, we're also learning that the Bengal CEO has called for an all-party meeting for the smooth functioning of the SIR exercise. What are the rumblings that you are learning from the state of West Bengal, which has pretty much declared war against the special intensive revision?
Oh, it's rumbling all around. Let me first tell you that as we pointed out, tomorrow is the day when there will be all-party meeting in ECI, where right now I am standing, Bengal Chief Electoral Officer office. Here, all-party meeting has been called off by the Bengal CEO. So all the political parties will come, and obviously they will actually present their version of it. But clearly, this is, though, you know, almost of the questions were regarding West Bengal, and the CEC Gyanesh Kumar, he said that the law and order is a state subject, and obviously this type of situation will not arise. But politically, clearly, the state's ruling party, they are opposing SIR. None other than the Chief Minister has said that SIR is a sort of NRC. All these types of statements have been on, and as the SIR has just been rolled out, has just been declared, it's quite clear that the Trinamool Congress, nowhere they are going to change their stand. They are saying that if bona fide voters' names are deleted, they are going to go and do everything for that. So they have already lined up rallies and meetings. They will definitely attend this all-party meeting and will actually try to weigh the water, what's actually happening. But the perception from the ruling party is clear. They are going to oppose it at any cost. On the other hand, the big development always is also on the other side that the BJP, they are absolutely supporting the entire process of SIR. They are on their point that 1 crore, more than 1 crore voters' names will be deleted, and there it will be proved that West Bengal, a lot of voters are from outsiders. There are a lot of fake voters and all these things. So the political war is on. The political war of the Battle of Bengal of 2026 has just started, and the rumblings is that definitely Trinamool Congress, they are not going to support SIR in any way. On the other hand, the BJP is going to support. Now we'll have to see how all this implementation takes on ground. What are the number of BLOs which goes out for them to give the enumeration form? What happens when they goes out?
Good evening, you're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Dhaka Jacob. The Election Commission of India is now getting ready for the second phase of the Special Intensive Review Exercise, or SIR. This will now be spread across 12 states starting from the end of this month. It includes all the poll-bound states next year except Assam, so which means Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala. The opposition-ruled states that are Bengal, Tamil Nadu and Kerala have already said that this is an anti-democratic exercise and this is really a backroom way of helping the BJP in those states. The Election Commission will have none of it. In fact, the Supreme Court too has endorsed the case of the Election Commission when it comes to the Bihar SIR exercise. So the question then is, why is the opposition deliberately derailing this exercise? The last time there was a scientific review of the electoral rolls was 20 years ago in 2003. So is India